I would
Well,
hope.
some people have asked whether or not you feel like North Idaho is a little bit too extreme in some of their elected officials.
No, I don't think extreme's the right term.
What do you think?
I think there's North Idaho legislators a little bit like me. We're outspoken. People know our thoughts, people know our feelings, and we have strong wills. I don't think extreme's the right term to use at all. I just think we speak up for our constituents and we push conservative agendas. That's a good thing.
So what do you think of the term alt-right, as a lot of people are calling what they consider extremists?
Yeah, I've been a Republican since I was a little kid because my mother was an elected Republican official in a very Democrat county growing up. And I'd mentioned earlier in the interview that the Democrats weren't really the Democrats back in the 50s and the 60s up in the Silver Valley of Idaho aren't like the Democrats in California or New Jersey or Chicago of today. They're what we refer to as they were blue dog Democrats. They were somewhat conservative, not like conservatism today, especially in Idaho. But we have a very strong Republican Party in Idaho, very strong. 29 of 35 senators in the Idaho Senate that are Republican. The Democrats only have six senators out of 35. On the House side, I think it's around 57 to 13, give or take. I might not have that exactly right, but point being, and every constitutional officer in Idaho is a Republican. Our 2 U.S. senators, our 2 U.S. congressmen are both Republican. We have one of the strongest Republican parties in the country. And what happens when you have such a big, strong Republican Party? Sometimes you argue with each other because there's not really any Democrats to argue with. And so
I like that.
there's a spectrum of the Republican Party. There are Republicans that are moderate, and there are Republicans that are a little less moderate, and there are Republicans that are very conservative, and there are conservatives to what I have used the term far right. And some people think I fall into that far right. Now, alt-right?
Far right, alt-right, even using the term readout, because, for example, we're being Readout News, we promote the self-sufficiency movement that people associate with the American Readout, which the American Readout is actually a geographical location, okay, of which North Idaho happens to be in the center. Okay, we're very conservative, we're Christian, we are all pretty much like-minded, which is what most people will tell you they're looking for when they come to this area. So some of the left, or the left-leaning, say beware the readouter movement. Well, I don't know about a movement, but there you go. How do you feel about all of that?
I think it's all fine. Again, it's, as I said earlier, it's why I never left Idaho. Excuse me. Grew up here. In fact, you just mentioned about the geographical region of the Redoubter, and northern Idaho is kind of the center of it. Well, Wallace, Idaho, where I was born and raised, is the center of the universe. Have you ever seen that in the ground?
No.
The plaque, the emblem in the ground in Wallace, Idaho?
No, but I think I'm going to have to make a trip there just to see it.
Yeah, film it. It marks the center of the universe. So not only, the Redoubters that have come up here, they're at the center of the universe now. That's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I like that. So I'm definitely going to have to make a trip for that one.
I think it's all been a good thing. The one thing that impresses me about very conservative Republicans, be it readout, alt-right, far-right, whatever term you want to use to describe those people, is they vote. They are informed citizens, and it couldn't be any more important. And I think that is a really great thing. I wish more groups would inform their members, whatever that group might be, to be informed citizens, to vote for what this country has gone through to protect that right. It's so important. And so I think it's great. And that's why I think I've been able to win my elections by such easy margins over the last 7 elections, 14 years, because of my voting record. You know, you just have to research whether it's NRA issues. Always had an A+ from the NRA. This is my strong beliefs about the Second Amendment, whether it's pro-life and how I've been attacked over a comment I did not say, but a very liberal Boise reporter put words in my mouth, and then she rescinded that when she realized that what I did was I had nodded my head and just acknowledging a conversation similar to what you're doing right now. And I'm on camera, you're not, so I say that. Everyone does that. And just having a conversation. So we're having a conversation at a candidate forum in Moscow, Idaho a couple of weeks ago, and a very conservative group. Very conservative group, so conservative that the 3 people that were conducting it, they're 3 gentlemen that run this group called Cross Politic, and it was myself and 2 of my opponents in the lieutenant governor race. These gentlemen running the interview said, we hate Trump, we hate Fulcher, we hate Labrador, we hate Little, we hate Alquist, we hate, and the list went on and on. They hated everybody. And I asked them, I said, is there anyone you like? And they said, yeah, we like Dan Foreman, Senator Foreman from Moscow. Good guy. Dan's endorsing me, supporting me in my race for lieutenant governor. I think Dan's the most, this year, the legislative session of 2018, Dan was the most named by the Idaho Freedom Foundation the most conservative senator. Last year I was. Last year was Dan's first year in the legislature. So he's done 1 term now, or just finishing the 2nd year of his first term. But point being is there was a comment about pro-life, and I was acknowledging the conversation, and the reporter in Boise is a very liberal reporter, and she's never liked me for my strong conservative positions. And she said that I had made reference to a pro-life thing that I never said. And she said, well, you nodded your head. And I said, you know, it was a conversation. You nod your head when you're having a conversation. Doesn't mean you're agreeing, disagreeing, or making a statement, but don't put words in my mouth. But this reporter criticized me 3 years ago also, because I came home every weekend from Boise during the legislative session to see my wife and go to church. And those are 2 very important things to me every week, is to see my wife, because she doesn't come to Boise with me, and go to church. And I get criticized by a reporter. You know what I say? Fake news.
I have been told that you have endorsed some candidates that are not quite as conservative as you. Okay, do you want to talk about that?
Do you have any particular names, or just in the past?
Luke Malik in the past. I did not bring my notes.
No, I just didn't know if you were talking about this 2018
no, I'm
or
talking
previous.
about
Okay.
Probably previous. I don't
Yeah.
know. I was going to ask you if
Yeah.
you've endorsed anybody for this primary on any race, but in the past, I'm told that you have endorsed candidates that are known to be not quite so conservative.
Boy, it's great that we're doing this interview and you're asking me directly, because people will make things up and say things. In fact, there's another thing you can look at that's public record, and sometimes people don't ever want to look at the facts or the public record. They just want to say things and think that they should be believed. The example is the Secretary of State's website and the donations made to candidates. My wife, and actually a legislator from up in the Sandpoint area, Senator Sean Keogh. Now she is retiring at the end of 2018. Her term will be up. But my wife had made a contribution to Sean a couple of years ago, maybe it was 4 years ago, of $100. And that's how it's reported in the Secretary of State's website. My wife wrote a check. I don't tell my wife how to vote. my wife and I disagree a handful of times every election about who I support, who she might support. And she supported Sean and gave Sean $100. And I was on the Kevin Miller radio show on Wednesday morning this week from Boise, and this same issue came up. And they said, what about Labrador and Little? You know, they say they're pretty conservative, their records don't hold up to mine, but Russ Fulcher has given Sean Keogh thousands of dollars over the time, thousands of dollars. But I give, or my wife I should say, gives Sean $100 and I get criticized. Well, what about Russ giving her thousands? What about Raul giving her, I think it was either $250 or $500? What about Raul? No one says anything about Raul, directly from Raul. But my wife gives Sean $100 and Bob Nonini gets criticized. I say, well, you know, why aren't they piling on Russ and Raul? Those two guys, they gave her a lot more than my wife gave her. So I find that interesting, how people will say that. To Luke Malik, they said, well, she's supporting so-and-so. And I said, well, she has the right to support whoever she wants. And so there have been some disagreements. And mentioning being on the Kevin Miller show with KIDO in Boise this week, that same issue came up. Kevin asked me about it. And I said, you know, I find it so frustrating or interesting or confusing that I get criticized for my wife giving $100 to a person up here in the north, a legislator, Sean Keogh, Senator Sean Keogh, actually, from up in the Sandpoint area. But Russ Fulcher had given Sean thousands of dollars over the last couple of elections, maybe 2 or 3 elections, so 4 or 6 years. And no one says, oh geez, we hate Russ Fulcher. I mean, Russ is a good guy. Russ and I served together for, 10 years. Me in the House, he in the Senate, and we served 1 Senate term together. But yet it's okay for Russ to give Sean, you know, thousands of dollars. And it's wrong for my wife to give Sean $100 and then put all the blame on me. Or Raul Labrador, he's running for governor. He gave Sean Keogh, it was either $250 or $500. And no one says anything about, oh, well, we don't like Raul Labrador because he gave Sean Keogh, you know, a few $100s. But they're mad at Bob Nonini because Bob's wife gave Sean $100. I don't get that. Now let's talk about Luke Malik. As people say, gee, Bob supported Luke Malik. You look at the Sunshine Reports. It's my wife has supported them. And so to my point a few minutes ago about a couple Republicans within Kootenai County telling me I better control my wife has a right to vote for and support whoever she wants. I hope she supports me. I mean, she's sure working with me a lot and been traveling the state with me, and I'd be lost without her. But I get frustrated when Republican primaries are for the party to pick their best nominee. And you're going to get a number of nominees in certain races, and they're all going to get some votes. At the end of the day, one's going to get more votes than the rest, and that's the winner of the primary. But that's what it's for, the ability to pick the best nominee. But there are people that if you don't support who they want you to support, then they're mad at you. And I think some of those people, rather than talk to my wife, maybe they don't know my wife, so they take it out on me. So that's, you know, my position. I just find it interesting, again, my analogy of, well, it's okay for Fulcher to do it, it's okay for Labrador to do it, but Bob Nonini takes the heat because his wife gave Sean $100. It doesn't make any sense to me.
You mentioned that almost 2 years ago, you endorsed Brad Little.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Brad had called me in July, about the middle to the end of July of 2016, and asked if I would consider endorsing him for his run for governor. He was the first to publicly announce he was running for governor, and I told him I would. And at that time, I had supported Russ Fulcher previously in 2014 when Russ ran against Butch. But I told Brad I would commit to him. And at that time, I had no intentions of running for lieutenant governor. And the reason, now fast forward to October of 17, so a year and a quarter past that, I got involved in the lieutenant governor's race because I didn't have any confidence in the candidates that were in the race or seeing any traction, that they were really getting any traction. There were no good conservatives, solid conservatives with a proven track record. Yes, there were candidates that said they were conservative, but when you look at some of those candidates' records when they voted against the NRA, when they walked and didn't vote on House Bill 646 that I sponsored in 2008, which Idaho became the first state in the country to make the coercion of a woman into having an abortion a felony. One of my opponents walked and is recorded as a absent without voting. And it's very easy if you're going to be absent to sign a pair slip, it's referred to. The Secretary of the House, the Secretary of the Senate will help you get it done. And so you can be recorded as voting. House Bill 222, that was in 2011. It was guns on campus. This same person in the lieutenant governor race said that she's very pro-gun, pro-NRA, always had an A+ rating from the NRA. Not true. Do your research and you'll see that. But the point I'm getting to is about endorsements. So I endorsed Brad Little early. I've not put up one sign for him. I've not handed out one piece of literature for him. I like that. Idaho needs Nonini. The choice is clear. Now, there'll be some people who disagree. I get that. But I just think that if you look at the voting records, what I say, you do a little research about my opponents, not conservative, or they make up a little fibs about their voting records, or voted against the NRA and guns on campus. That's public record. The voters can look it up. 2011, House Bill 222. Easy one to remember. Guns, 22s, 222. And see how one of my opponents voted against the NRA. Sided with all the Democrats and the most moderate members of the Idaho House to vote no. Or House Bill 654, bill number. I sponsored it. Took me 2 years. First state in the country. Pro-life. Coercion of abortion, a felony. We beat Georgia. Georgia did it 2 years after us. That's why I've received the endorsement last week of Idaho Chooses Life, has endorsed me because of my pro-life. That's why Russ Fulcher and I are the only two members in these races right now for Congress or Lieutenant Governor, or for that matter, Governor, that have received the Friend of Life Award from Idaho Chooses Life because of Russ and my record and what we worked on. So, proud of that. Idaho needs Nonini. Make sure you research the candidates and please vote on May 15th because the Republican primary is going to pick the next governor, the next lieutenant governor, and the next congressman from the 1st Congressional District. May 15th, 3.5 weeks away.